The massive chamber of the Galactic Council stretched across 5 kilometers of polished crystal and living metal. 12 ancient species sat in their designated sections, each representing thousands of years of civilization and wisdom. The ethereal collective floated in their energy fields, while the stone speakers carved their words into granite tablets. The aquatic dominions swam in their pressurized tanks, and the machine consciousness hummed with electronic thoughts. At the far end of the chamber, almost as an afterthought, sat the human delegation. 3 representatives from Earth occupied a small platform that looked tiny compared to the massive structures around them. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat straight in her simple blue uniform, flanked by Dr. Marcus Webb and Engineer Captain Lisa Torres. They had been part of this council for exactly 103 years, since humanity had achieved faster-than-light travel and been grudgingly accepted into galactic society. Today was different. Today humanity had something important to offer. The current speaker was Lord Vextar of the Hegemony, a species that had ruled star systems when humans were still discovering fire. His voice boomed through universal translators as he described the galaxy's growing energy crisis. The quantum storms in the outer rim continue to worsen. 3 more systems have gone dark this cycle. Our traditional fusion reactors cannot handle the increased demand, and our solar collectors are failing as stellar radiation becomes more unpredictable. Murmurs of agreement echoed through the chamber. The energy crisis had been building for decades. Entire civilizations were rationing power. Trade routes were shutting down. Some worlds had already been abandoned. Ambassador Chen raised her hand. The gesture was so small that it took several minutes for the council's attention to shift to the human section. When the chamber finally fell silent, she stood. "Honored Council," she began, her voice clear despite the vast space. "Humanity believes we have found a solution to the energy crisis." A ripple of what might have been amusement passed through the chamber. The crystalline hierarchy made a sound like breaking glass, which their translators rendered as polite laughter. Elder Thos of the Time Walkers tapped his chronometer staff, a gesture of impatience. "Please continue, young human," said Lord Vextar, his tone carrying the weight of condescension that only 10,000 years of civilization could provide. Dr. Webb stepped forward and activated a holographic display. Complex equations filled the air, showing energy flow patterns and quantum field calculations. We call it cascade resonance. By creating controlled quantum tunnels between dimensions, we can tap into the zero-point energy field. Our calculations show this could provide unlimited clean energy with no radiation or waste products. The equations hung in the air like dancing stars. For a moment, even the ancient species seemed to pay attention. The mathematics were elegant, the theory sound, and the potential application staggering. Then Elder Thos spoke. "Impossible. If such technology were feasible, the Time Walkers would have discovered it eons ago. We have manipulated temporal fields for longer than your species has existed." The ethereal collective's spokesman shimmered as he added, "Young species always believe they can solve problems with simple solutions. The energy crisis requires wisdom, not wild theories from a civilization barely out of its home system." Captain Torres tried to interject. "If you would just examine our test results from a species that achieved spaceflight yesterday." The machine consciousness's voice was flat and electronic. "Our computational models have analyzed every possible energy source. Your proposal violates several fundamental laws of physics." Ambassador Chen remained calm, though her colleagues could see the tension in her shoulders. "With respect, honored members, our approach focuses on quantum field manipulation in ways that your traditional methods may not have explored. Human understanding of quantum mechanics has developed along different paths than yours." Lord Vextar's laugh was like grinding stone. "Different paths? Child, your species discovered quantum mechanics a few centuries ago. The hegemony has been working with quantum fields since before your son was born. Do you truly believe that in your brief existence you have found something that has escaped beings who have studied the universe for millions of years?" The chamber filled with what the translators interpreted as agreement. Chittering from the hive clusters, harmonic resonance from the song weavers, and electromagnetic pulses from the void dancers, all expressing the same sentiment. How dare these newcomers think they could teach their elders? The stone speakers carved their judgment into a new tablet. "The humans demonstrate typical juvenile arrogance. Their proposal is rejected for review." We suggest they focus on learning from their betters rather than wasting the Council's time with impossible theories. Ambassador Chen closed her eyes for a moment. When she opened them, her expression had changed. The hope was gone, replaced by something harder to read. "I understand," she said quietly. "We will not waste any more of the Council's time." As the human delegation gathered their materials, Elder Thos added a final dismissal. "Perhaps in a few thousand years, when your species has matured, you will understand why we cannot take every wild idea seriously. Until then, we suggest you focus on the small contributions you can make to galactic society." The three humans walked quietly from the chamber. None of the council members noticed that Ambassador Chen paused at the exit and looked back once. Her expression was not one of defeat, but of someone who had just made a very important decision. Later that day, from her quarters on the diplomatic station, Ambassador Chen sent a single encrypted message to Earth. It contained only 2 words: Protocol Exodus. On Earth, in a secure facility deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Director General Harrison Okafor received the message. He sat in silence for a long moment, then activated his communication array. The first message went to Admiral Zhang of the Deep Space Fleet, the second to Dr. Yuki Tanaka, head of the Cascade Resonance Project, the third to Commander Sarah Mitchell of the Colonial Defense Initiative. Each message was different, but they all carried the same basic instruction: begin the systematic withdrawal of all human presence from galactic society. Do it quietly, do it carefully, and do it in a way that would leave no trace of what humanity was truly capable of. Within hours, sleeper protocols that had been in place for decades began to activate across human space. Research stations and remote systems received coded transmissions. Trade vessels started reporting mechanical difficulties that would require them to return to human ports. Diplomatic staff across the galaxy began requesting routine reassignments. Protocol Exodus had been designed 50 years earlier by human strategists who understood something the galactic community did not. Sometimes the best response to being underestimated was to simply disappear and let others discover what they had lost. The Galactic Council continued their session, discussing traditional solutions to the energy crisis. None of them noticed that the human delegation never returned to their assigned quarters. By the time the session ended 3 days later, humanity had already begun to vanish from the galactic stage. They had offered partnership. They had been met with condescension. Now they would see how well the galaxy functioned without the young, inexperienced humans, who apparently had nothing of value to contribute. 3 months after the rejection at the Galactic Council, Commander Eric Valdez received what appeared to be a routine maintenance request. The message from Earth was simple: Research Station Omega-7 requires immediate inspection for quantum field contamination. All non-essential personnel to be evacuated pending review. Eric had been running Omega-7 for 6 years. The station sat in the neutral space between human and crystalline hierarchy territory, conducting what appeared to be basic research on stellar formation. The hierarchy had always viewed the human presence there as harmless, even beneficial. Human research often provided useful data that they could build upon. What the hierarchy did not know was that Omega-7 was actually monitoring their military communications and tracking their fleet movements. It was also serving as an early warning system for potential threats from dark space. Eric had identified 17 potential hostile contacts in the past year alone, all of which had been quietly deterred by routine human patrol routes. Eric looked at the evacuation order one more time, then activated the station's communication array. Attention all personnel. We have received orders for immediate evacuation due to potential quantum contamination. This is not a drill. All research, data to be secured and uploaded to the secure network. Personal effects limited to 1 bag per person. Transport ships will arrive in 6 hours. His crew moved with practiced efficiency. They had all drilled for this scenario, though most believed it was just another emergency protocol. Only Eric and his senior staff knew the real meaning of quantum contamination. It was the code word for Protocol Exodus. Similar scenes were playing out across human space. On the trade station Meridian Point, Captain Rosa Santos received orders to return to Earth for routine hull inspections. The station had been facilitating trade between humans and the aquatic Dominion for 20 years, handling millions of tons of goods annually. The Dominion trusted human merchants more than most other species because humans were scrupulously honest in their dealings. What the Dominion did not realize was that human traders had been quietly solving supply chain problems across 3 sectors. When a Dominion colony ran short of medical supplies, human ships would mysteriously appear with exactly what was needed. When pirate attacks threatened trade routes, human vessels would just happen to be in the area with superior defensive capabilities. Captain Santos uploaded her final trade reports and began shutting down station operations. "Meridian control to all vessels," she broadcast. "We are temporarily suspending operations for mandatory safety upgrades. All current contracts will be honored, but no new agreements can be processed at this time. We apologize for any inconvenience." In the hegemony space, Dr. Yuki Tanaka was packing up her laboratory on the joint research vessel, Prometheus. For 8 years, she had been working alongside hegemony scientists on quantum field applications. The project had made significant advances in energy storage and distribution, advances that the hegemony believed were equally shared between their species. They were not equally shared. Dr. Tanaka's real work involved using their collaboration to test human quantum field theories. Every breakthrough the hegemony achieved was actually based on carefully guided research that built toward proving cascade resonance theory. The hegemony scientists were unknowingly helping humanity perfect the very technology the Council had rejected. "I have received word that my family requires my immediate attention," Dr. Tanaka explained to her hegemony colleagues. "A personal emergency. I must return to Earth for an indefinite period." It was not technically a lie. Humanity was indeed her family, and they did need her attention. The hegemony scientists expressed their regrets and assured her that her position would be waiting when she returned. They had no reason to suspect that she would not be coming back, or that her departure would leave critical gaps in their research. Across the galaxy, the pattern repeated. Human diplomats requested transfers. Human merchants reported mechanical problems. Human researchers discovered family emergencies. Trade agreements were allowed to expire without renewal. Contracts were fulfilled, but not extended. Applications for new projects were politely withdrawn. The withdrawal was so gradual and so polite that most species barely noticed. Humans had always been a small presence in galactic society. When they were no longer around, it seemed like a minor change rather than a significant loss. Admiral Zhang commanded the Deep Space Fleet from her flagship Endeavour, positioned in the Outer Rim territories. Her ships had been conducting what appeared to be routine patrols for decades, but their real mission was far more complex. They were monitoring threats that other species could not detect, tracking dark matter anomalies, and maintaining early warning systems for dangers from beyond the galactic edge. When the Exodus order came, Admiral Zhang began consolidating her fleet. "All vessels report to designated rally points for fleet reorganization," she commanded. "We are implementing new patrol patterns that will require temporary concentration of forces." Her ships began moving toward human space, leaving the Outer Rim territories apparently unguarded. The other species had never realized the human fleet was there for their protection. As far as they knew, humans were just conducting training, exercises in the empty regions where nothing important ever happened. On Earth, Director General Okafor monitored the withdrawal from his command center. Reports flooded in from across human space. Research Station Alpha 3 evacuated. Trade Mission Bravo 7 returning to port. Diplomatic Mission Charlie 12 requesting transfer. Defense Patrol Delta 9 implementing new assignment parameters. Each report represented years of careful relationship building and quiet contribution to galactic society. Humans had been everywhere, doing everything, solving problems that other species did not even know existed. And now, they were disappearing. The most significant withdrawal involved the human colonies themselves. For over a century, human settlements had been scattered across dozens of systems, often in regions that other species considered marginal or dangerous. What those species did not realize was that human colonies had been placed strategically to monitor and protect critical trade routes and resource deposits. Commander Sarah Mitchell oversaw the activation of humanity's greatest secret, quantum stealth technology. One by one, human colonies began to vanish from galactic sensors. Not destroyed, not abandoned, but simply hidden behind quantum barriers that made them undetectable to conventional scanning methods. The technology was a direct application of cascade resonance theory, the same theory the Galactic Council had dismissed as impossible. By creating controlled quantum tunnels, human settlements could exist in the same space as normal reality, while being completely invisible to outside observation. As the stealth barriers activated, entire worlds seemed to simply stop existing. Their gravity remained, so orbital mechanics were unchanged. But any attempt to scan or communicate with these systems found nothing but empty space. The few species that noticed the disappearances assumed they were sensor malfunctions. After all, making entire planets invisible was impossible. Every expert in the galaxy agreed on that point. 6 months after Protocol Exodus began, humanity had effectively withdrawn from galactic society. Trade stations were closed, research partnerships had ended, diplomatic posts were vacant, and human colonies had vanished from all records. Yet the withdrawal had been so careful and so gradual that most species viewed it as a temporary reorganization rather than a permanent departure. In the hidden spaces between dimensions, humanity was busy putting their rejected energy technology to work. Cascade resonance generators came online across human space, providing unlimited clean energy. Manufacturing capabilities expanded exponentially. Research projects that had been limited by energy constraints suddenly had no such limitations. The technology that the galaxy's greatest minds had declared impossible was not only working, but revolutionizing human civilization. They were becoming something new, something far beyond what they had been when they first joined the galactic community. And the galaxy continued as if nothing had changed, unaware that they had dismissed the very species that had been quietly holding their civilization together. Commander Vexnas of the Crystalline Hierarchy stared at the tactical display in disbelief. 3 more cargo convoys had been hit by pirates in the Outer Rim this month, bringing the total losses to levels not seen in decades. The pirates were getting bolder, their attacks more coordinated and their escape routes more sophisticated. "How are they evading our patrols?" Vexnas asked his tactical officer. "Our sensor nets should detect any significant vessel movement in these sectors." "Unknown, sir. They seem to know exactly when our patrols will be in each area, and they strike in the gaps between our coverage patterns. It's as if they have access to our deployment schedules." What Commander Vexnas did not know was that for the past 50 years, human vessels had been conducting training exercises in these same sectors. The pirates had not gained access to hierarchy deployment schedules. They simply no longer had to worry about running into unexpected human patrols that would have quietly discouraged their activities. In the Aquatic Dominion's territory, similar problems were emerging. Supply convoys carrying critical medical supplies to outer colonies were disappearing. Distress calls were going unanswered. Trade routes that had been stable for decades were becoming dangerous. Admiral Keth Ara of the Dominion Navy reviewed the incident reports with growing frustration. "Where are our rapid response units? How are these raiders escaping before we can reach the distress calls?" "Our response times have not changed, Admiral," her aide replied carefully. "We reach the attack sites as quickly as we always have, but the raiders seem to have improved their operational efficiency. They complete their attacks and escape much faster than before." The aide was not lying, but the full truth was more complex. Dominion response times had not changed, but the raiders were no longer being intercepted by mysterious merchant vessels that happened to be in the area with superior firepower and defensive capabilities. Human traders had often arrived at attack sites before Dominion forces, driving off the raiders and providing assistance to victims. On the neutral station, Gamma Centauri, Trade Administrator Gorth of the Machine Consciousness was experiencing a crisis that his logical mind could not fully process. Supply chains that had operated smoothly for decades were experiencing critical failures. "The probability calculations do not match observed outcomes," Gorth reported to his superiors. "Food shipments from agricultural worlds are arriving spoiled, despite maintaining proper shipping temperatures. Medical supplies are experiencing quality control failures at rates that exceed statistical expectations. Manufactured goods are arriving with defects that should have been caught during production. The machine consciousness had always prided itself on logical analysis, but they could not analyze what they could not detect. For years, human quality control specialists had been quietly embedded in supply chains across the galaxy. They checked shipments for contamination, monitored storage conditions, and identified potential problems before they became critical failures. Without this hidden network of quality assurance, the carefully balanced galactic economy was beginning to show stress fractures. The most serious concerns were emerging in the border regions, where the hegemony of Kresh had been testing the resolve of the galactic community. For generations, the Kresh had been contained by a combination of military deterrence and diplomatic pressure. But recently, their probing attacks had become more aggressive. Lord Marshal Thekvar of the Kresh studied the latest intelligence reports with growing confidence. The defensive responses from the neighboring sectors have been weaker than expected, he reported to the Kresh High Command. Our raids into neutral territory have met minimal resistance. What of the Void War veterans? Asked Supreme Commander Grazith. Intelligence reports indicated they maintained a presence in these regions. No confirmed sightings in the past 6 months. Either they have withdrawn from active operations, or they were never as significant a threat as previously believed. The Void War veterans were human soldiers who had fought in the galaxy's last major conflict 20 years earlier. They had developed a reputation as the most effective peacekeepers in known space, capable of resolving conflicts with minimal casualties and maximum efficiency. Other species respected them, and aggressive factions feared them. What the Kresh did not realize was that these veterans had been the main reason for the decades of peace along the border regions. Their presence, even in small numbers, had served as a deterrent to Kresh expansion. Without them, the careful balance of power was shifting. In the Galactic Council chambers, the problems were beginning to surface as formal complaints and requests for assistance. Elder Thos of the Time Walkers addressed the assembly with growing concern. The reports we are receiving suggest a systematic breakdown in galactic security and commerce. Piracy rates have increased by 40%. Supply chain failures are affecting multiple sectors. Border security incidents are becoming more frequent. Lord Vextar of the Hegemony nodded in agreement. Our own forces are being stretched thin responding to incidents that should be routine security matters. We are experiencing equipment failures and logistical problems that are difficult to explain. The Ethereal Collective's representative shimmered as he spoke. Perhaps we should consider requesting assistance from the human territories. They have always been willing to contribute to galactic security efforts. A moment of silence fell over the chamber. For the first time in months, someone had mentioned the humans. When did we last receive a formal communication from the human delegation? Asked Elder Thos. The council's administrative staff consulted their records. The answer was disturbing. No formal communications had been received from humanity in over 4 months. No requests for assistance, no offers of aid, no routine diplomatic updates. Perhaps they are dealing with internal matters, suggested the machine consciousness representative. Young species often require periods of isolation to resolve developmental challenges. Lord Vextar dismissed the concern with a wave. The humans will return when they realize they need the wisdom and protection of the greater galactic community. Until then, we must handle these problems ourselves, as we always have. But the problems continued to mount. Each week brought new reports of system failures, security breaches, and logistical breakdowns. The galaxy was experiencing difficulties that had not been seen in generations, and no one could identify the root cause. In the hidden spaces where humanity now resided, monitoring stations continued to track galactic events. Director General Okafor reviewed the reports with a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. The timeline is proceeding as predicted, reported Admiral Zhang. Security incidents are up 38%. Trade efficiency is down 22%. The Kresh are showing increased aggressive behavior in 3 border sectors. Any signs that they are connecting our absence to these problems? Okafor asked. None whatsoever. They still view us as insignificant. The Council appears to believe that these are unrelated coincidences that they can solve through traditional methods. Okafor nodded slowly. Continue monitoring. Do not intervene unless absolutely necessary to prevent massive loss of life. They need to understand the full scope of what they have lost before they will be ready to treat us as equals. The first. Cracks in galactic civilization were spreading, but the galaxy's leaders remained convinced that they could handle any challenge without the help of the young, inexperienced humans who had contributed so little to galactic society. They were about to discover how wrong they were. 1 year after humanity's quiet departure, the galaxy faced its worst crisis in 1,000 years. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in an atmosphere of barely controlled panic. Representatives from 12 species filled the great chamber, but the problems they faced seemed to come from everywhere at once. Lord Vextar of the Hegemony spoke first, his voice strained with exhaustion. The Kresh Hegemony has now occupied 3 complete star systems. Their fleet movements suggest they are preparing for major expansion into core territories. Our intelligence networks in the border regions have gone completely dark. The Kresh had grown bolder with each successful raid. What had started as minor border skirmishes had escalated into full-scale conquest. Their advanced warships now controlled strategic jump points that had been neutral for centuries. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to know exactly which systems were poorly defended and which supply routes were vulnerable. Admiral Cathara of the Aquatic Dominion floated in her pressurized tank, her bioluminescent patterns flickering with distress. The situation is worse than you know. The energy crisis has reached critical levels across our territories. 3 of our core worlds are experiencing rolling blackouts. Our fusion reactors cannot handle the increased demand, and our backup systems are failing faster than we can repair them. The energy crisis that the Council had been debating for years had finally reached catastrophic proportions. Industrial production was grinding to a halt. Life support systems on space stations were operating at minimal levels. Some colonies had already been evacuated because they could no longer maintain basic infrastructure. Elder Thos of the Time Walkers tapped his chronometer staff, the sound echoing through the chamber like a death knell. The worst news comes from our deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures moving in from dark space. The patterns match archived data from the Great Silence. A chill fell over the assembly. The Great Silence had occurred over 2,000 years ago, when entire sectors of the galaxy had simply stopped communicating. When exploration fleets had finally reached those regions, they found empty systems with all signs of life, mysteriously erased. The cause had never been determined, but the threat had seemingly vanished as mysteriously as it had appeared. Are you suggesting the same threat has returned? He asked the representative of the crystalline hierarchy, her crystalline voice tinkling with fear. Worse, Elder Thos replied. The energy signatures are larger and more numerous than those recorded in the archives. Our outer rim monitoring stations have already detected 3 separate incursion points. The entities responsible appear to be systematically consuming everything in their path. What the Council did not know was that these entities had been probing galactic defenses for decades. They were an ancient mechanical species known to humanity as the Devourers, machines that consumed entire worlds to fuel their expansion across the universe. Human deep space monitoring networks had been tracking their movements and implementing containment protocols to keep them in dark space. Without those hidden networks, the Devourers had finally found gaps in the galaxy's defenses large enough to exploit. The machine consciousness representative processed the available data with mechanical precision. Probability analysis indicates that current defensive capabilities are insufficient to counter a multi-vector threat of this magnitude. We are facing simultaneous crises that exceed our combined response capacity. Lord Vextar slammed his armored fist on the speaking platform. Then we must request immediate assistance from all available allies. Contact the human territories. They have always been willing to contribute to galactic defense efforts. For the first time in the crisis, someone had mentioned directly requesting help from humanity. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. After dismissing human contributions for so long, they were now prepared to ask for assistance. The ethereal collective's spokesman shimmered as he spoke. We have been attempting to establish contact with human territories for the past 3 months. All communication channels appear to be inactive. Long-range sensors show no signs of activity in any known human system. What do you mean, no activity? Demanded Admiral Cathura. Exactly that. Sensors detect no energy signatures, no communication broadcasts, no ship movements. The human systems appear to be completely empty. It is as if they simply vanished. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly. An entire species did not simply disappear. There had to be an explanation. Elder Thos consulted his temporal records. According to our archives, the last confirmed human presence in galactic society was Ambassador Chen's delegation, which departed after the energy crisis proposal session. That was over 1 year ago. A terrible realization was beginning to dawn on some of the assembly members. The timing was too coincidental. The galaxy's problems had started roughly when human involvement had ended. The representative of the Song Weavers sang a haunting melody that the translators rendered as, "Could the departure of one small species truly cause such widespread disruption?" The mathematics do not seem to support such a connection. But even as she sang the words, doubt crept into her harmonies. The humans had always been present during peacekeeping operations. Their merchants had facilitated trade across multiple sectors. Their researchers had contributed to collaborative projects throughout the galaxy. The machine consciousness representative began processing correlations at maximum speed. Analysis indicates significant statistical correlation between human departure timeline and the onset of current crisis patterns. Probability of coincidence, less than 0.3%. The chamber erupted in arguments and accusations. Some species blamed the humans for abandoning their allies in a time of crisis. Others blamed the Council for driving them away. A few began to question whether humanity's contributions had been far greater than anyone had realized. Lord Vextar called for order. Regardless of the cause, we must focus on solutions. We need to locate the humans and request their immediate assistance. Send long-range exploration fleets to every known human system. Use emergency broadcast protocols on all frequencies, Admiral Cathara agreed. I will dispatch our fastest ships to human space immediately. If they are there, we will find them. But the search fleets found nothing. System after system that had once hosted human colonies now appeared completely empty. Planets that had supported millions of inhabitants showed no signs of life or technology. Space stations that had served as trade hubs were simply gone. The most disturbing discovery came from the former location of Earth itself. The Sol system appeared normal on long-range sensors. But when the exploration fleet arrived, they found only empty space where humanity's homeworld should have been. The Sun was still there, the other planets remained in their orbits, but Earth had vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, the crises continued to escalate. The Kresh advance had accelerated, and they were now threatening core worlds. The energy shortages had reached critical levels across multiple sectors. Worst of all, the first devourer fleets had entered inhabited systems and begun their systematic consumption of everything they encountered. The Outer Rim colony of New Vextra sent a final desperate message before going dark. Unknown mechanical entities are consuming our infrastructure. They appear to be converting matter into energy for some unknown purpose. Our weapons have no effect. They are taking everything. Buildings, vehicles, even the ground itself. Please send help. When relief fleets reached New Vextra, they found a barren rock where a thriving colony had stood just days before. The entire surface had been stripped down to bedrock. Even the atmosphere was gone. As the galaxy burned around them, the Galactic Council was forced to confront a terrible truth. They might have driven away the one species that could have helped them survive the coming darkness. And now, when they needed humanity most, they were nowhere to be found. The cascade of failures had begun, and there seemed to be no way to stop it. The great chamber of the Galactic Council had never felt so empty, despite being filled with representatives from 12 desperate species. 6 months had passed since the Devourer fleets had entered inhabited space, and 14 colonies had been completely consumed. The Kresh hegemony now controlled a quarter of the galaxy's trade routes. Energy shortages had brought industrial production to a standstill across multiple sectors. Elder Thos of the Time Walkers had aged visibly in the past months. His chronometer staff trembled as he spoke. Our combined fleets have engaged the Devourer advance units 3 times. Each battle results in complete destruction of our forces. Their technology appears to be centuries ahead of our capabilities. They consume our ships as easily as they consume planets. Lord Vextar of the Hegemony looked defeated. The Kresh have launched a major offensive against the crystalline hierarchy. Without our border defenses, they are advancing faster than we can respond. Our intelligence networks are completely compromised. It is as if they know our every move before we make it. The machine consciousness representative processed the grim statistics with mechanical precision. Current projection models indicate total galactic civilization collapse within 18 months. Energy production is at 37% of requirements. Military effectiveness has declined by 68%. Trade efficiency has fallen to 12% of previous levels. In the depths of their despair, the Council had finally begun to understand the scope of their mistake. The humans had not been junior partners in galactic civilization. They had been the invisible foundation that held everything together. Admiral Cathera of the Aquatic Dominion spoke through her tank's communication system, her bioluminescent patterns dim with exhaustion. We have finally analyzed the full extent of human involvement in galactic operations. They were not simply contributing to our efforts. They were coordinating them. She activated a holographic display that filled the chamber with data streams. Human logistics networks facilitated 73% of intersector trade. Human quality control systems prevented an estimated 4,000 supply chain failures annually. Human patrol routes covered security gaps that we never realized existed. The ethereal collective's spokesman shimmered with shame. Our deep analysis reveals that human diplomatic initiatives prevented an average of 12 potential conflicts each year. Their research partnerships accelerated technological development across all species by an estimated 30%. Their peacekeeping forces were not just effective, they were essential. But the most shocking revelation came from the song weavers, whose harmonics carried notes of profound regret. We have discovered that human monitoring systems were tracking the entities we now call devourers for over 50 years. Their containment protocols kept these threats in dark space. When human oversight ended, the barriers failed. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity had not just been contributing to galactic civilization. They had been protecting it from threats that the other species could not even detect. Elder Thos tapped his staff slowly, each sound echoing like a funeral drum. We dismissed their energy solution as impossible. We treated them as inexperienced children, and all the while they were holding our entire civilization together. Lord Vextar's voice was barely above a whisper. How did we not see it? How could an entire galactic council be so blind? The answer was painful but simple. They had seen what they expected to see. A young species that had achieved spaceflight recently could not possibly be more advanced than civilizations that had existed for millennia. It was impossible for newcomers to have solutions that ancient wisdom had missed. They had been so certain of their superiority that they had never looked closely enough to see the truth. As the council struggled with their newfound understanding, an unexpected signal appeared on their communication arrays. It was a simple message broadcast on the emergency frequencies, but it carried an identifier that had not been seen in over a year. Terran Diplomatic Corps. The message was brief. Galactic Council. This is Ambassador Lisa Chen, daughter of former Ambassador Sarah Chen. We have been monitoring galactic events. We are prepared to discuss limited assistance under new terms. If you wish to communicate, respond to this frequency within 24 hours. The Council's response was immediate and unanimous. Within minutes, a reply was transmitted. Ambassador Chen, we accept any terms you propose. Please, we desperately need your help. The response came 6 hours later. Ambassador Lisa Chen appeared in the Great Chamber as a holographic projection, but her presence felt more real than any of the physical delegates. She was younger than her mother had been, but carried the same quiet dignity and unmistakable competence. Honored Council, she began, her voice carrying across the vast chamber with perfect clarity. I speak for humanity in this dark hour. We have watched your struggles with the same sadness that you might feel watching children make dangerous mistakes. Elder Thos interrupted desperately. Ambassador, we now understand our errors. We need your assistance to combat the Devourer threat and restore stability to the galaxy. We are prepared to offer full membership privileges and... Ambassador Chen raised her hand and the ancient being fell silent. You misunderstand our position. 18 months ago, humanity offered partnership. We offered to share our energy solution and work together as equals. You responded with condescension and dismissal. Her image looked directly at each delegation in turn. You demanded that we prove ourselves worthy of your attention. You expected us to accept subservience in exchange for the privilege of serving your needs. We chose dignity instead, Lord Vextar spoke urgently. But surely you cannot abandon the galaxy to these threats. Billions of lives are at stake. We are not abandoning anyone, Ambassador Chen replied calmly. We are offering assistance on terms that reflect our actual relationship. Humanity has solved the energy crisis you face. Our cascade resonance technology provides unlimited clean power. We have defensive systems capable of stopping the Devourer advance. We have intelligence networks that can locate Kresh command centers. The chamber erupted in excited murmurs. The technologies they desperately needed were available. Salvation was possible. What are your terms? Asked Admiral Kithara. Ambassador Chen's expression was serious but not unkind. Partnership, not patronage. Equal representation in all galactic decisions, not token positions. Recognition that humanity's contributions are essential, not optional. And most importantly, acknowledgement that competence and wisdom are not determined by the age of a civilization. Elder Thos did not hesitate. Agreed, all terms accepted. When can you begin assistance operations? Immediately, Ambassador Chen replied. Our fleets are already moving to intercept the Devourer advance. Our energy distribution ships are preparing to provide emergency power to affected systems. Our intelligence services are sharing Kresh tactical data with your military commands. As if summoned by her words, space around the council station filled with ships that had not been there moments before. Hundreds of human vessels materialized as quantum stealth fields deactivated, revealing a fleet more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The human ships were sleek and powerful, their hulls gleaming with energy fields that spoke of technologies far beyond galactic standards. They moved with precision and purpose, immediately taking defensive positions around the station. How is this possible? Whispered the machine consciousness representative. Our sensors detected no approach vectors. Ambassador Chen smiled for the first time during the conversation. Cascade resonance technology has many applications beyond energy generation. We have been here all along, watching and waiting for you to realize that you needed us as much as we needed you. Over the following months, the galaxy witnessed humanity's true capabilities. Human fleets engaged the Devourers with weapons that turned the mechanical destroyers into harmless scrap metal. Human energy distribution networks restored power to systems that had been dark for years. Human intelligence services provided such detailed information about Kresh operations that the enemy's advance was not just stopped but completely reversed. But more than their military and technological prowess, humanity demonstrated something that the ancient species had forgotten: the power of genuine cooperation. They did not seek to dominate or control. They shared their knowledge freely and worked alongside their allies as true equals. The galaxy was saved, but it was forever changed. The Galactic Council was restructured to reflect the new reality, that wisdom and capability could emerge from any species, regardless of age or apparent sophistication. Humanity took its place as a full partner in galactic civilization, bringing innovations and perspectives that would benefit everyone. Years later, Elder Thos would often reflect on the lesson humanity had taught them. In his final address to the Reformed Council, he said, "We learned that true strength sometimes means stepping away from those who cannot see your worth. And true wisdom means recognizing that the young may have solutions that the old have never imagined." Humanity had departed quietly when dismissed, but they returned as equals when needed. In doing so, they had transformed not just the galaxy's understanding of power,